While the Supreme Court ultimately held that the president's entry ban was lawful, it did not reject the assumption made by lower courts and critics that Congress is in charge of whom to ban from entering the country. Instead, the court simply found that Congress had expressly delegated some of its own power to the president. Similarly, when President Barack Obama announced that he would shield young unauthorized immigrants from deportation, the backlash was swift. Commentators, members of Congress, and even his own immigration enforcement agents pilloried him for usurping the constitutional authority of Congress. Congress had already considered and rejected legislative protections for the so-called Dreamers. This decision, opponents argued, precluded the president from unilaterally protecting them. Even the president's own Justice Department concluded that another of the president's plans to shield the parents of Dreamers would violate the law because it deviated from the immigration priorities Congress had established. Though the critics of Presidents Obama and Trump were separated by a vast ideological chasm, their broadsides embodied the same widely shared belief that Congress, not the president, ought to dictate who may come to the United States and who will be forced to leave. Seen in this light, the events of recent years are aberrational, reflecting a sharp and disastrous departure from the proper historical structure of immigration lawmaking in America. But this belief is a myth. In this book, we show that the modern-day battles of the Trump and Obama eras reflect a deep historical truth about the structure of immigration policymaking. The president stands at its center. Drawing on a wide range of sources, rich historical materials, unique data on immigration enforcement, and insider accounts of our nation's massive immigration bureaucracy, we tell the story of how, over the course of 2 centuries, the president became our immigration policymaker in chief. Today, the president's extraordinary power over immigration policy grows out of his utterly ordinary constitutional duty to enforce the law. As the back and forth over the border wall highlights, the logic and tools of enforcement define contemporary immigration policy. This dynamic, in turn, empowers the president and executive officials to shape the meaning of immigration law according to their own values and policy preferences. With its powers to legislate and appropriate, Congress sets parameters around the president's actions and retains the authority to stymie or remake the policies advanced by an administration. But by constructing an elaborate immigration code and building a sweeping deportation state over the course of the 20th century, Congress, counterintuitively, has transferred power to the executive branch to determine the metes and bounds of the polity through discretionary judgments about whether and how to enforce the law. We call this phenomenon de facto delegation, and today it is at the heart of countless high-profile controversies over immigration policy. When we juxtapose the Trump administration's border enforcement policies with its predecessors, 2 fundamental features of our system that have shaped immigration law for decades come into view. First, the enforcement imperative, the obligation and culture of policing, has driven the policy responses of myriad administrations, irrespective of ideology. The arrival of large numbers of Central American families and children seeking asylum skyrocketed during President Obama's second term, confounding his administration during its final years. The Obama White House and agency officials responded with an enforcement mindset, in a fashion that anticipated some of what we have seen under Trump. Senior leadership ordered the detention of border crossers, including families with small children, in a conscious effort to deter future migrants with the threat of incarceration, and to persuade some of those who had already arrived to abandon their asylum claims. The Trump administration has escalated this enforcement approach dramatically. Trump's Department of Homeland Security, DHS, has separated thousands of children from their parents, in many cases without accounting for their whereabouts, while also expanding